lavish men's restroom of a five-star hotel, a racist hotel owner publicly humiliated an elderly black janitor, hurling insults and mockery at her, completely oblivious to the fact that Hollywood legend Johnny Depp was sitting just a few feet away in one of the stalls. What happened next was something no one could have predicted, turning the tide of this cruel act in the most unexpected way. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. And if you love stories like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. The last of the overnight mop buckets were still draining when the day shift arrived at the prestigious Orchid Regency Hotel, their wheels squeaking softly against the polished marble floors. Elena Ellie Jackson, an elderly black woman with graying hair and a quiet resilience in her eyes, pushed her cleaning cart down the plush carpeted hallway. Beside her walked Clara Mitchell, a younger white woman with a warm demeanor and a kindness that made long shifts a little easier. As they entered the first suite of the morning, Clara broke the easy silence between them. "Did you hear about the big event today, Ellie?" she asked, her tone a mix of excitement and skepticism. Ellie barely looked up from arranging her cleaning supplies. "What event?" "A workers' appreciation charity dinner," Clara explained, straightening the already neat bed sheets. "It's tied to the Labor Day celebrations. Management is calling it Dignity in Labor or something like that." Ellie let out a short, dry laugh. "Dignity in labor? Coming from them? That's rich." Clara hesitated before responding. I know. But maybe this time it'll be different. They say it's meant to highlight fair treatment and respect for workers across all industries." Ellie's expression softened slightly at Clara's optimism, but her voice stayed skeptical. "Remember last year? They pulled the same stunt, made a big speech, patted themselves on the back, and nothing changed. We weren't treated any better the next day." Clara sighed, nodding. "You're right. But I guess I just keep hoping, you know?" As they continued methodically working, Clara lowered her voice conspiratorially. "You know what I heard? Richard Hensley, the hotel owner, is obsessed with getting that 5-star rating. Maybe that's why he's putting so much effort into this event." Ellie paused mid-wipe, raising an eyebrow. "And you think that'll mean better pay for us?" Clara shrugged, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "Could be. A higher rating means more money coming in, right?" Ellie shook her head, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "Oh, Clara. When we went from 3 stars to 4, do you know what we got? A tiny bump for inflation. No bonuses, no recognition for the extra hours, just more work and higher expectations." Clara's shoulders slumped slightly, but she quickly straightened up. "Well, we've still got to do our best. Some big names are staying this week, local influencers, a few Hollywood celebrities. And Mr. Hensley is personally checking every suite for quality control." Ellie nodded, professionalism evident even through her cynicism. "You're right about that. No matter what, the rooms have to be spotless." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "Clara, would you mind double-checking my work? These old eyes of mine aren't what they used to be, but I refuse to let my standards slip." Clara's face lit up with a warm smile. "Of course, Ellie. You know I've always got your back." Their bond was evident in the unspoken rhythm of their work, a partnership built over years of shared shifts, long nights, and quiet understanding. No matter the challenges, they found solace in their camaraderie, making the exhausting job a little more bearable. As they wrapped up the suite, Clara did a final sweep with her sharp eyes. "All perfect, Ellie. As always." Ellie allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "Thanks, Clara. Now, let's see what the next room has in store for us." But as they pushed their cleaning cart toward the next suite, something in the air shifted. The plush carpet muffled their footsteps, but it couldn't dampen the growing sense of anticipation. Reaching the door, they exchanged a glance before Ellie swiped the key card. The door swung open, and both women froze in sheer shock. The sight before them was pure chaos, the aftermath of what looked like a wild, reckless party. Confetti and glitter lay scattered across the floor, crunching softly under their shoes as they cautiously stepped inside. Empty bottles of every shape and size littered the room, some balancing precariously on expensive furniture, others rolling across the floor. But that was just the beginning. Because what awaited them inside this suite would set off a chain of events that no one, especially not Richard Hensley, ever saw coming. And in the middle of it all, Johnny Depp. Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. Clara let out a low whistle. Well, someone had a good time. Ellie shook her head, eyes widening as she took in the chaotic disaster zone before them. Food and drink stains smeared across nearly every surface. Glitter clung to everything, from the plush velvet sofa to the once elegant wallpaper. The air was thick with the stale scent of alcohol, mixed with something unidentifiable that made Ellie wrinkle her nose. A good time? Looks more like a tornado tore through this place, she muttered, a mix of disbelief and resignation in her voice. As they stepped further into the suite, the magnitude of their task became painfully clear. The bedroom was just as wrecked, clothes tossed carelessly across the floor, bed sheets tangled into a chaotic mess. But it was the bathroom that truly made them pause. Clara peeked inside first and immediately recoiled. "Oh my God," she gasped. Ellie joined her at the doorway and instantly understood Clara's reaction. Soap scum coated the walls and mirrors, leaving a grimy film over the once gleaming surfaces. Water pooled across the marble floor, turning it into a slippery hazard. And the state of the toilet? Best left undescribed. Despite the daunting mess before them, Ellie and Clara exchanged a knowing look. This wasn't their first nightmare cleanup, and it definitely wouldn't be their last. If anything, moments like this brought them closer. There was a certain unspoken camaraderie in tackling a job that most people wouldn't dare touch. Ellie exhaled sharply, placing her hands on her hips. "Well, at least we won't be bored today." Clara chuckled, grateful for Ellie's ability to find humor in even the most overwhelming situations. "I'd love to know what kind of guests caused this disaster," she mused, picking up an empty bottle. Ellie smirked as she started stripping the bed. "Probably some young hotshots who think they're too important to clean up after themselves. You know the type." As they worked, they shared quiet jokes and observations about the destruction, their easy banter making the grueling task slightly more bearable. They fell into their usual rhythm. Ellie tackled the bedroom with expert efficiency, smoothing out freshly laundered sheets and restoring order to the mess of clothing. Meanwhile, Clara steeled herself and dove headfirst into the bathroom, armed with industrial-strength cleaning products and sheer determination. Time blurred as they worked tirelessly, gradually restoring order to the chaos. Ellie had just smoothed the last wrinkle on the perfectly made bed when a sharp sound at the door made her freeze. A throat cleared, loud, authoritative. Ellie turned slowly, her stomach sinking as she recognized the imposing figure in the doorway. Richard Hensley, the owner of the Orchid Regency Hotel. His presence alone seemed to suck the air from the room, filling it with a palpable tension. Ellie straightened instinctively, offering a respectful but firm greeting. "Good morning, Mr. Hensley." From the bathroom doorway, Clara stepped out hastily, immediately bowing her head. "Mr. Hensley, sir," she said, her voice tinged with both surprise and nervousness. Mr. Hensley's sharp gaze swept over the room, his frown deepening as his eyes landed on Ellie. "Miss Jackson," he said coolly, his voice dripping with condescension. "I see you've forgotten proper etiquette when addressing your superiors. A bow would be more appropriate, like Miss Mitchell here." Ellie felt a heat rise in her cheeks, anger, embarrassment, indignation all mixing together. She had worked at this hotel for over a decade, always conducting herself with professionalism and pride. But she swallowed her emotions, forcing herself to comply. Her aging joints protested as she attempted to bow. "I apologize, Mr. Hensley." "You're right," she said evenly, keeping her voice steady despite the sting of humiliation in her chest. Mr. Hensley's lip curled in disdain. "Never mind. You can't even bow properly. It doesn't matter now." Ellie straightened, her expression unreadable, even as a deep ache settled in her heart. She had dealt with prejudice before, but rarely so blatantly, and never from someone who had complete power over her livelihood. Mr. Hensley took a step further into the room, scanning the half-cleaned space with growing irritation. His scowl darkened as he took in the lingering signs of last night's debauchery. "What is the meaning of this?" he snapped, his voice rising. "Why isn't this room spotless? We have VIP guests arriving today." Ellie took a measured breath before responding. "Sir, we only just started cleaning. This room was in quite a state when we arrived." "Excuses." Mr. Hensley cut her off, his face twisting with anger. "I don't want to hear excuses from you, Miss Jackson. Your age is clearly affecting your ability to work efficiently. Perhaps it's time we reconsider whether you're still fit for this position." Clara, who had been biting her tongue, finally couldn't stay silent any longer. "Mr. Hensley, please," she pleaded. "We can have this room cleaned in time. Ellie and I work well together, and—" But before she could finish, Mr. Hensley turned to her, and in an instant, his entire demeanor shifted. The scowl melted away. The sharpness in his eyes softened into something else entirely. His lips curled, not into a frown, but into a sleazy smirk. Now, Miss Mitchell," he said, his tone suddenly dripping with an inappropriate smoothness. "Don't sweat it, sweetheart. I know you're doing your best." Ellie's jaw tightened. She knew exactly what she was witnessing. And she wasn't the only one. Because just beyond the slightly ajar bathroom door, someone else was watching. Someone Hensley never would have expected. Johnny Depp. And what happened next? No one saw it coming. Stick around, because this story is about to take a turn no one could have predicted. Someone as pretty as you deserves a better partner than this old woman. Mr. Hensley's voice dripped with mock concern, but his eyes darted between Clara and Ellie with something far colder, something calculated. "In fact," he continued, "I think it's time for a change. You two have been working together for far too long. All this familiarity leads to too much gossip, too much inefficiency." Clara's face fell. "But sir, I enjoy working with Ellie. We've been partners for years, and—" "Enough." Hensley's voice boomed through the suite, making Clara flinch. "My decision is final. Miss Jackson, you will report to my office immediately. Miss Mitchell, you'll be assigned a new partner. Now, get back to work." And with that, he turned on his heel and strode out, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Ellie and Clara exchanged a look, one filled with disbelief, sorrow, and an understanding that needed no words. Clara mouthed a silent "I'm sorry." Ellie responded with a slow nod, a deep blink of her tired eyes. There was nothing to be sorry for. They both knew the ugly truth of what had just happened. But as Ellie turned to follow Hensley, an unsettling feeling gnawed at her chest. Something had shifted. Not just in her job, but in the very fabric of her life at the Orchid Regency Hotel. Ellie followed Hensley through the winding corridors, her steps heavy with dread. The plush carpet beneath her feet had always felt like a symbol of luxury. Now, it felt like quicksand, pulling her down, warning her of what lay ahead. They passed by grand mirrors, ornate artwork, and golden chandeliers, opulence she had spent years maintaining but never truly been a part of. And then, they reached his office. Unlike the inviting warmth of the hotel's public spaces, this door emanated something entirely different. Cold. Unwelcoming. Hensley pushed it open without a glance back, stepping inside with the confidence of a man who knew he controlled everything within those walls. The room was a monument to his power. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city skyline, morning light streaming in and casting sharp, angular shadows across the space. A massive mahogany desk dominated the room, flanked by leather chairs so expensive they probably cost more than Ellie's entire yearly salary. The bookshelves, lined with untouched, decorative books, were just for show. Much like everything else about this place. Hensley took his seat, the high-backed chair creaking slightly as he settled in. Ellie remained standing. She waited for him to offer her a chair. The offer never came. It was a subtle, deliberate power play. A grown woman, standing like a child being scolded. Ellie felt the weight of all her years pressing down on her shoulders. "Miss Jackson," Hensley began, his voice laced with fake concern. "I've been reviewing your performance, and I'm afraid we need to make some changes." Ellie's heart clenched, but her face remained unreadable. She had faced adversity before. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her waver. "What kind of changes, sir?" Hensley leaned back, steepling his fingers, pretending to give it weight. "Effective immediately, you will no longer be assigned to room cleaning duties." Ellie felt her breath hitch. "Instead, you'll be reassigned to janitorial work." He let the words hang, his gaze cold and unwavering. "You'll handle the public restrooms from now on." The words hit Ellie like a physical blow. Years of hard work, of spotless rooms, of unwavering dedication, reduced to this. Cleaning public toilets wasn't just a demotion. It was an erasure. "But sir," she started, forcing her voice to remain even, "I've always received excellent reviews." "I don't understand." Hensley cut her off with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Miss Jackson, you must understand." He paused, tilting his head, as if he were about to say something truly profound. "It wouldn't be good for our guests to see someone like you, old and dark, cleaning the hotel rooms as they pass through the halls." Silence. The kind of silence that crashes through a room like an avalanche. Ellie froze. She had faced racism before. She had faced ageism before. But rarely had she seen someone wield both so openly, so brazenly, especially from a man who held her entire livelihood in his hands. Her jaw tightened, her pulse hammering in her ears. Housekeeping, he continued smoothly, should reflect the face of the hotel. Young people. Lively spirits. Bright smiles. Ellie's fingers curled into fists at her sides. She fought to keep her expression neutral. "Sir," she said carefully, "my record is spotless. I have never received a single complaint." "Complaints aren't everything, Miss Jackson," he interrupted, waving her off as though her words meant nothing. "There are other considerations. For instance." He leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice like he was about to share some secret knowledge. "Did you know that elderly people tend to leave unpleasant odors in rooms?" Ellie felt the world tilt slightly. "Of course," he continued, feigning sympathy, "it's not your fault. But we must think about our guests' comfort." And that was it. That was the moment. That was the instant Ellie realized she had nothing left to lose. Because somewhere behind her, someone else had been listening. Someone Hensley never would have expected. And when Johnny Depp stepped out of the shadows, clearing his throat, the smirk on Hensley's face vanished instantly. What happened next? Let's just say, the real show was about to begin. And no one saw it coming. "That's simply not true, Mr. Hensley. I have never." "This," he snapped, cutting her off, his mask of concern finally crumbling to reveal the ugliness beneath, "is exactly why you don't deserve to work in hotel rooms anymore. Your attitude. Your inability to accept constructive criticism. The public toilets suit your look more." Ellie stood there, stunned into silence. Each word struck like a physical blow, chipping away at the dignity she had fought so hard to maintain throughout her life. Hensley's voice softened, but the cruelty remained. "Look, Miss Jackson, you should be grateful. Many hotels wouldn't even keep someone like you on staff. But we recognize the value of cheap labor." His meaning was unmistakable. The public restrooms need constant attention. Frankly, it's a job better suited to someone of your background. The implication burned. Her years of dedicated service? Dismissed in mere minutes. "You will report to your new supervisor, Cass, at the lobby's public restroom area." His attention was already drifting to the papers on his desk. "She'll show you the ropes. That's all, Miss Jackson. You're dismissed." Ellie didn't move at first. Her mind reeled from the sudden, devastating shift in her reality. A part of her wanted to fight, to demand justice, to make him see the blatant, gut-wrenching injustice of what he had just done. But she had spent enough years in this world to know how these battles played out. With a stiff nod, she turned and left the office, each step carrying the heavy weight of what had just transpired. As she pulled the door shut behind her, she leaned against the wall, taking a deep breath to steady herself. The hallway stretched before her, suddenly seeming longer and more daunting than ever. She had entered that office as a respected member of the housekeeping staff. She left it feeling diminished, her dignity bruised, but not broken. With a slow inhale, she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and began the long walk to her new assignment. Because Ellie Jackson was not a woman who gave up easily. Ellie's descent to the ground floor felt like a journey into exile. Each step down the grand marble staircase echoed with the weight of her demotion, reverberating through her very being. Her mind was a whirlwind, anger, hurt, disbelief, all fighting for dominance as she tried to process the brutal reality of what had just happened. Memories flooded in, unbidden. Her first day at the Orchid Regency. How proud she had been to secure a position in such a prestigious establishment, despite her age. The countless rooms she had meticulously cleaned. The satisfaction she felt when guests left glowing reviews about the immaculate state of their accommodations. Her spotless record, once a source of deep pride, now meaningless. Because at the end of the day, none of it had mattered to men like Hensley. The lobby came into view. A space she had walked through thousands of times. But today, it felt different. The crystal chandeliers, the polished floors, the elegant furniture, it all stood as a monument to a world she had dedicated herself to upholding but had never truly belonged to. And now, she was being pushed even further to the margins. Ellie scanned the area, searching for her new supervisor. Her eyes landed on a middle-aged woman, slouched against the door of the janitor's closet, absently picking at her nails. She barely looked up as Ellie approached. "You must be Elena," she drawled, not even bothering to get her name right. "I'm Cass. Hensley said you'd be coming." Ellie nodded, trying to maintain her composure. "Yes, that's right. I'm here to report for my new assignment." Cass barely acknowledged the words. Right. Public restrooms. Not much to it, really." She jerked a thumb toward the open closet behind her. "Cleaning supplies are in there, mops, buckets, all that jazz. Check the restrooms every hour. More if it's busy. Make sure the floors stay dry." Ellie waited for more instructions, something, anything, to give her a sense of structure in this sudden new reality. Cass merely shrugged. "Any questions?" Ellie had 1,000. But Cass's tone made it clear she wasn't interested in answering any of them. Ellie swallowed hard. I suppose not." Cass exhaled sharply. "Great." She was already turning away. "Then figure it out yourself. I've got other things to do." And with that, she walked off, leaving Ellie alone in front of the janitor's closet. For a long moment, Ellie just stood there. Lost. Alone. More alone than she had felt in years. Then, with a deep breath, she reached for the cleaning supplies, refusing to let the moment break her. She pushed her new cart forward, making her way toward the public restrooms. But as she entered the open space, she felt it. The stares. When she had been in housekeeping, guests had largely ignored her, she was just part of the background. But now, as she rolled her janitor's cart into the pristine, high-traffic lobby, she felt it instantly. Curious eyes. Disapproving glances. And then, something worse. A whisper. Two guests, a couple dressed in designer suits, slowed their steps as they passed by. One of them muttered something under their breath. Ellie caught only 2 words. New help. It hit her harder than she expected. Not because she cared what they thought, but because she had spent years proving that she was more than that. And now, in a single afternoon, Hensley had reduced her to nothing more than a disposable worker. But what Hensley didn't know, what no one in that lobby knew, was that this story was far from over. Because as Ellie picked up her mop and turned toward the restroom, she wasn't alone. Someone had been watching, and he wasn't going to stay silent. Johnny Depp had seen everything. And what happened next would change everything. Stay tuned, because this story is just getting started. Ellie's demotion to restroom duty was a harsh adjustment. The endless flow of guests left her little time to breathe, the physical strain taking a toll on her aging body. Snippets of conversation about the hotel's worker dignity charity event drifted to her ears, the irony cutting deep. While guests upstairs congratulated themselves, she was scrubbing toilets, discarded by the very system they claimed to honor. As she mopped the men's restroom, she found herself in an unexpected scene, Mr. Hensley, preening in the mirror, rehearsing a speech about worker respect. The bitter contrast between his words and his actions was almost laughable. But when he turned, accidentally dragging his blazer through a puddle, his facade of charm shattered. His fury was immediate. "You people always have excuses," he bellowed, his rage escalating until, in a final act of humiliation, he grabbed a bucket of dirty water and drenched Ellie. She stood there, soaked and stunned, as he sneered, "Clean it up." But she wasn't the only witness. As Ellie bent to pick up the mop, the restroom door swung open. Johnny Depp stepped out of a stall. The silence was deafening. His sharp gaze flicked between Ellie, her dripping uniform, and Mr. Hensley. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, with quiet deliberation, Depp removed his earbuds and said, "I heard everything." Mr. Hensley's entire demeanor changed. His rage melted into nervous laughter as he scrambled to save face. "Oh, Mr. Depp. Just a small misunderstanding." But Depp wasn't buying it. He met Ellie's eyes, then he winked. Ellie didn't know what it meant yet, but something was about to change. At the hotel's charity event, the ballroom shimmered with wealth and false virtue. Ellie, still in her janitor's uniform, sat front row, next to Johnny Depp. Then he took the stage. At first, his speech followed the script, praising worker dignity. But then his tone shifted. "How can we honor workers," he said, voice steady and cutting, "when the very man hosting this event humiliates and abuses them behind closed doors?" The crowd stirred. Whispers spread. Mr. Hensley, just entering the room, froze. Then Johnny did something that changed everything. He called Ellie to the stage. She hesitated. Then, slowly, she stood. Facing a sea of wealthy guests, she spoke her truth. She told them about the discrimination, the humiliation, the dirty water thrown in her face by the same man now trying to celebrate worker dignity. Gasps filled the room. Some guests left in protest. Hensley rushed forward, trying to control the damage, offering a sudden promotion, bonuses, anything to make this go away. But Ellie met his gaze and said, "I resign." Behind her, her entire team followed suit. Hensley's face paled. "You can't all quit." Ellie just smiled. "Take this as a chance to fix how you treat people." "But we're done." Outside the ballroom, Johnny Depp pulled Ellie aside. "You were incredible," he said. "Now, I have an offer." His friend owned a hotel, one that valued workers. He was offering Ellie and her entire team new jobs. Tears pricked her eyes. After everything, a fresh start. As the team celebrated, Ellie looked at the people around her. Her friends. Her new future. This wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning.